Hey witches, welcome to Busy, Gritty, Inked, and Witchy, a magical living podcast for the busy witch. I'm Morgan, eclectic witch of almost 25 years, Avalon priestess, and busy witch. Here we'll talk all things witchy, from current metaphysical happenings to my busy witch tips and tricks, and everything in the in-between. This podcast is my personal journey, filled with my knowledge, opinions, and unique way of looking at the world. Join me as I weave the magical and the mundane in every episode. Hello and welcome back to Busy, Gritty, Inked, and Witchy. I am Morgan, and yes, I said back because I took a little bit of a break. It is now September. I cannot believe it. September, like we are on the verge of spooky season, and if you ask Starbucks, we are in spooky season already. But yes, I took a little bit of time off. Prep here for the busy season starts in the summer. So everything that you all, if you're a customer of ours, everything that you see in October, November, December started in June and July. So it takes a lot. And then I don't know if you noticed the new intro, got some new stuff going on the website. I mean, I'm really excited. I needed the break so that I could revamp the podcast just a little bit, plan some stuff out, become a little bit more consistent for you all. And I'm back. So yay! To start off coming back, I'm going to do a Q&A today. So months ago, I feel bad, but a few months ago on Instagram in my stories, I asked people for questions and I got some really great answers to my question. I will be covering some of them today. There were too many for me to shove all into one episode, but I will be doing some of them today. And if you like this kind of thing, then yeah, follow me on Instagram. I'm at Ink Goddess Creations. No spaces, no numbers, no underscores, no weird spellings. Those would be spam people if you find them, and I have quite a few admirers, as I like to call them. They are scammers though. Just straight out Inked Goddess Creations. That's where you'll find me everywhere, and that's me. So, but yeah, I do question and answer in the stories every once in a while for future episodes. So that's what we're doing today. I have 3 questions today that I wanted to answer. So we're going to be talking about shadow working, my favorite part of being a witch, and house protections. But this is a busy witch episode. So we're just going to be here for maybe 15, 20 minutes. If you've never been here before, welcome. All right. So the first question I was asked is, what types of questions should you ask yourself when doing shadow work and journaling? Okay, great question. In fact, just to kind of let you know, I do have an entire episode on shadow working, which is episode 37. But as we get into the dark part of the year, a lot of witches do shadow working. And shadow working is basically diving deep inside yourself to shine a light on your shadows. And shadows can be limiting beliefs that you have. They can be bad habits. They can be things that you kind of hide away and you don't really bring out because maybe you're ashamed of them. Those are your shadows. So shadow working, when you do shadow working, you're shining a light on those things so that you're taking your power back from them. Because believe it or not, shadows can subconsciously rule you. I mean, fear is a very powerful thing. So you're only as strong as your shadows. So if you have shadows that are keeping you from living your life because of that little voice in the back of your head saying you can't do this because, or you shouldn't do this because, those things are keeping you from living your life. And I'll say it again, you're only as strong as your shadows. So the more you shed light on them, the more you bring them to the surface, the more you acknowledge them, the more power you take back from them to yourself, and the more control you have over your life, your thoughts, your actions, all of that stuff. So that's why shadow working is so important. I do recommend, especially if you have some trauma from your past, I recommend therapy. I recommend therapy if you don't have trauma. I mean, I think we all have certain levels of trauma, but I recommend therapy to everybody, every single person in the world. Therapy is amazing. And nowadays there are really amazing packages online for like online therapy, which don't cost an arm and a leg. So I do recommend this, but especially if you do have trauma from your past that you kind of buried down, I do recommend, going through it with a therapist as you bring stuff up. So that's kind of like my caveat. Anyway, so when you start to do shadow working, the easiest thing to do is find out, or you can ask yourself, what is a fear or trigger or something that affects me? Okay, so let's say you're scrolling on social media and you see a post and immediately you're like, this is fucking bullshit. And it's not something horrible. Like you ask a friend, like, hey, is this bullshit? And they're like, nah, I didn't really get affected by that. Okay, then that means that you had an emotional response to it. So that is a trigger for you, okay? So when you have a fear or a trigger or something that affects you, the best thing to do is to pause and ask, why does this cause an emotional response? Okay? And really dive down in it. Like, does it piss you off because of jealousy? I mean, honestly. Does it piss you off because it's just wrong? Well, why is it just wrong? And I'm using like bunny air quotation marks. So you take that trigger, you take that fear, you take that emotional response. And that's what emotions are, is they're your body's way of telling you something's up, okay? They can be something's up good, something's up bad. So when something happens and you have an emotional response to it, that's your first step. It's okay, why am I having this emotional response? Okay. So as you start to dive down into that through journaling, and maybe you can just free write, you ask yourself that question, see what comes out. Then you can go even one step further down. Like, when did this start? When is the first time I can remember being pissed off about this? Or when is the first time I can remember feeling this emotion? Okay. And that can be a really strong one too, because then you can do this in meditation. You can do this while journaling. You can do this in therapy, but some idea might pop into your head, because physical reactions to emotions, they get in there and they hold memories. So you can be like, okay, when was the first time I remember feeling this way? And all of a sudden, a memory from first grade will pop into your head or something. And then that will be the trigger for you. Like, that's when this limiting belief started. That's when this fear started. That's when this emotional reaction started. Okay. The body is so powerful. It will remember things. And just to kind of share a little bit, a little over a month ago would have been the 2-year anniversary that we had something traumatic happen in our family. And a month ago, I could not sleep. I had insomnia that was horrible. And I couldn't figure it out because I was doing everything the same. I wasn't laying in bed, like laying awake at night, thinking about everything I had to do. It just started with insomnia. And on my second day of insomnia, I looked at the calendar, and that's when I realized it was the 2-year anniversary of this traumatic event that happened in our family. And so 2 years ago to the day, I was up all night and wasn't sleeping and everything. My body remembered that trauma. So I didn't know what was going on consciously in my mind. I was like, why do I have insomnia? But my body knew, because 2 years ago, that was imprinted on my body, and that trauma gets stuck in you. Okay. So that's why you do shadow working. And I will tell you that the minute that I shined light on that and was like, oh my God, that's why I haven't been able to sleep, because the body holds trauma. And even though this doesn't affect me as much anymore, because I've had 2 years of therapy to get through it, my body still held on to it. So once I shined a light onto that, I slept perfectly the next night. So it's not always a, give and take, or that easily of you shine a light on it, it fixes itself. But for me, it was because I've done 2 years of therapy because of it. So that's what you're doing with shadow working. So you're getting down to the core of it. You're shedding light on it. And that gets the ball rolling on healing and taking back your power from that scenario or that shadow. Okay. So again, episode 37 is all about shadow working. But to get started, find that fear, that trigger, or something that really emotionally causes a response out of you, and ask yourself, why does it cause this response? When is the first time that I felt this emotion? Like, when did this start? How did this start? And journal your way out, and that will help you shed light on things. Okay? If you're looking for a magical community where you can just be yourself, check out my Ink Spirit Coven. The Coven is an online learning circle for eclectic witches who want to learn new witchcraft practices and how to easily incorporate magic into their daily lives, all while being supported on their personal spiritual journey. And you'll have me as your magical mentor, sharing my knowledge, answering questions, and facilitating the online community. Head to inkspirit.com to learn more and join. And if unique witchcraft supplies made by witches for witches is just what you need, head to my store, inkgoddesscreations.com, to see what we have to enhance your magical practice. We also have the Ink Goddess Creations box, a monthly subscription of magic mail filled with exclusive items that fit a magical theme. Head to the site to see this month's theme and sneak peeks. So the second question I was asked is, what is my favorite part of being a witch? I love this question. So I had to really think about it because there's so many amazing aspects of witchcraft. For example, the freedom to practice your beliefs the way that you want to. I think that's a great pull for witchcraft. The power that it gives you, like that feeling when you cast a spell and then that shit happens and like comes true on the other end and you manifest it, like that is an exhilaration unlike anything else. It's an amazing feeling. For me, though, I went back to kind of my origin story. I grew up in a small southern town. I was like the black sheep of the popular kids group. And so when the shit hit the fan, they all pointed fingers at me. And, I was bullied because of it. I fucking hate that word, but I was bullied because of it. And they started calling me a witch. Some shit happened. They started calling me a witch. And I said, you know what? If you're going to call me a witch, I might as well be one. And at the time, we're talking like mid to late 90s. So I had to go to a bookstore at the mall, which the closest mall was an hour away, and bought a book on Wicca. And so I really felt at home. So that, I think, is my favorite part of being a witch, is how immediately through witchcraft, I feel at home and I feel like myself. And there's an awakening that happened within me. And it was like, yes, this is me. This is who I am. And there's a comfort to it because I felt so weird for so long. And when the movie The Craft came out, the first time I ever watched that movie, I was like, is this real? There was something inside of me that awakened. And I felt alive. I had so many questions, and I tried asking my grandmother. She was devout Methodist. I tried asking her for answers, and eventually she just kind of got annoyed with my questions and was like, you just have to believe, Morgan. And I'm like, I can't do that. You have to answer. Like, I'm an Aquarius. I am very inquisitive. I will ask questions until I die. So I have to find answers. And at the same time that The Craft movie came out, around the same time, I had all this shit happen in my life, and the bullying really amped up with high school. But I felt alive watching The Craft. And while there are aspects of that movie that are completely true, there are other aspects that are completely Hollywood. And finding a book on Wicca and witchcraft helped me decipher what was real and what was Hollywood. And that was it. I felt at home. I felt comfortable. I felt like I could relax. I felt like I could exhale because I was home. Here was something. I had questions. They had answers. The books had answers. They made sense to me. And so I immediately felt at home and myself, and probably myself for the first time. I was probably, I was about 17 at the time. So probably the first time I'd ever felt like myself in 16 or 17 years. That is what I love most about being a witch, and my favorite part of being a witch is the ability to be myself, have my beliefs, have them make sense to me. If I ask a question, it gets answered. And to not have that shame or guilt. I think a lot of mainstream religions revolve around shame or guilt. Like, oh, you feel that way? That's horrible. You're going to hell. And it's not. You're human. Fucking feel angry. Get it out. Yell, scream, do all of that. You're not going to fucking go to a place and burn for the rest of eternity because you yelled at your significant other, because he pissed you off or whatever the scenario is, So I think not having that guilt and shame that is associated with a lot of mainstream religions, there's just a freedom with witchcraft and paganism that you don't find with other religions. And that's another thing that I absolutely love about my spiritual path. Yeah. All right. The third question, the final question for today, different ways of doing house protections. I love this. And I made a list and realized, holy shit, I have a lot of ways. And I've used all of these at one point or another in my witchcraft history. Sprinkle black salt around the house perimeter, just a small amount. I've shared this tip online before, and I've had people, like, oh, sprinkling salt on the ground is going to change the pH of the earth. Like, how much salt are you pouring? Like, it's a symbolic gesture. Like, you don't have to make like a Sam and Dean salt ring around your house, that's freaking 2 inches thick. Just sprinkle a little bit of black salt around your house. The gaps metaphysically, energetically seal themselves in between grains of salt. It's not like supernatural. It's the intention. And anyway, black salt helps keep away nosy neighbors. I don't know, I learned that like decades ago and I freaking love it. You can also sprinkle regular salt as well, but black salt specifically helps with nosy neighbors. I place little tiny quartz points at each windowsill, also with a line of salt at each windowsill as well. If you have cats, dogs, anything like that like to sit in the windowsills, of course they will mess it up. Yeah. I also put this is more cleansing, but it can also be for protection. I have little bowls of salt all over my house that I switch out like monthly. 4 quartz points in the 4 furthest corners of your home or office. Charge them with protection energy first, and then put them into the 4 corners, the furthest 4 corners. So one of those corners might be like your garage. But just try and get it as close to the furthest 4 corners as possible. And yes, when I do put down the last quartz point, I envision an actual grid like in Charmed. I do it every time. I love that show. The original Charmed too. I don't know if I have to go without saying that everything I refer to is always the original and not the remake. I watched the remake of The Craft. I was not a fan. I have not even watched the remake of Charmed. So anyway, keys above or near your door, especially the main door of your home, like the main one you use. So that could be like the door from the garage or something. But hang a key, like an antique key or a regular key above it. Decorative keys as well that you buy at like, I don't know, Ross or TJ Maxx or wherever in the home decor section. And then anoint all windows and doors with protection oil. I literally just kind of put some on a finger, dot the window, dot the door. You can put it on the door frames, the window sills, all of that as well. But these are all things that I have personally used for house protections. There's also, creating a protection jar, burying it near your front door. If you, have a home where you can bury stuff, or you can make a protection jar and just set it near your front door, hide it away somewhere. It's another thing you can do. I guess a broom too. I have a besom by my front door. Bristles up. That's the way I've always done it. I think we got into a discussion one time online. A lot of people will hang them sideways as well for cleansing and protection, like above the door, they'll hang them sideways. But I always learned never to put a besom with the bristles down, because then all of your protection, your good luck, your great energy that you put into that drains out the bristles. So I store mine with the bristles up near the doors of the house. And then I've also seen hang them sideways above the door. Yep, that's what I have for you all today. A quick episode. We're at the 20-minute mark, so not too bad. There's going to be some changes coming up. There's going to be some great things coming up as well. I have some great guests planned for the podcast. This break was very productive for me and really reignited that flame that I have. This podcast is a hobby of mine. This is what I do for fun, which is why it's been a little sporadic, but I do want to get more consistent for you all and expand a little bit. So yeah, I'm going to have some fun guests coming up, and we're going to cover some really fun things, get a little bit more witchy. The spooky season is upon us. So that's what's coming up for Busy, Gritty, Inked, and Witchy. And I definitely want to thank you all for listening and for giving me a platform to share my knowledge, my tips, my opinions, all of this fun stuff. Thank you so much for joining me.